Good afternoon, students. So today I'm doing a lecture that's not on a Friday, not on a Wednesday, and I'm going to talk about the different kinds of narrative essays. So in this class for week 2, you're going to be writing a narrative essay. And so a narrative essay is when you talk about a story of your life or a story from your life that teaches a lesson. So that's the most basic kind of story, is when you take stories from your own experience based on your experience from your life. So what makes a narrative essay different than academic writing is that when you do academic writing, you're writing about other people and other people's stories. When we write a research paper, we are writing about other people's experiences. That's why we have to research the book, to read about other people's experiences and write about it. But in a narrative essay, you're writing about yourself and you're writing about your experiences. You can include other people's experiences and intermix it together if you want. So the most common essay topic for this class is I became a nurse because. And then you would have, I became a nurse because I want to help people, I want a steady job, and I want to be a role model for my kids. And then your body paragraphs will then match your thesis. And so your first paragraph would be, I want to help people. Your second paragraph would be about, I want to be a role model for my kids. And then your third paragraph would be, I want a steady job with benefits. And then your fifth paragraph would be your conclusion. So remember, when you write your essay, you always have to have an introduction, a body, paragraphs, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. And that your thesis statement is always the last sentence of the first paragraph. And that's known as a funnel introduction paragraph. And so I'm going to, so since today is an informal lecture, so it's not the usual Wednesday lecture, so I'm just simply going to introduce to you the different kinds of narrative essays. There are many kinds, but your book defines a narrative essay as telling a story about your life that teaches a lesson. That's it in an eggshell. Is what your story is about. Okay? So let's get to the PowerPoint on what is a narrative essay. So first let me set it up. So have a little patience, see if I can set this up completely. It's a lot more fun when I set it up. So, when you have a narrative essay, so what is narration? A narrative essay is when you write a story about your life, like an autobiography. You can write about lessons you have learned in life, or why you are the way you are today, or what you want to leave as your legacy. And then your story be life lessons from your life. So the narrative essay is written in the first person case. That is I, me, my, our, we, mine, us. And we avoid using second person case because that sounds too conversational. So avoid using you and your to make your narrative essay more dramatic. A narrative essay can be written as one story with one moral, like a fable or fairy tale, or a narrative essay can be written as a series of mini-stories. A personal narrative, which is what a narrative essay is, tells stories about your life, not made-up stories. Whatever the topics, the stories should help readers see, hear, touch, and taste these details that make the experiences come alive. To do that, writers must carefully describe key aspects of why the experiences are important. As you write your story, be prepared to relive that experience, all that you felt, sensed during the event. The purpose of a personal narrative is to explore meaningful aspects of your life, your experiences, things that you care for and are shaped by. In a personal narrative, writers explore topics about their lives they find meaningful and worth exploring through the lens of personal experience and reflection. So for personal essays, you need to use narration, description, and reflection. With narration, be able to tell a good story. With description, have good descriptive passages. With reflection, think back and evaluate your life. When you tell a story, tell the reader the main point of your story. Example thesis. After boot camp, I became a mature man because I learned to rely on myself. I learned discipline, and I learned to care about others more than myself. So this is a thesis for a multi-story narrative. One of the most embarrassing days of my life, I learned to give people second chances. This is a one-story thesis statement. We use description by painting a mental picture so the reader can experience what we experienced. We use reflection to reflect back on an experience to improve how we can do our jobs. Who is my audience? So your audience, you're writing to children, so always keep in mind your audience. You're writing to children, you can talk about talking animals. You're writing to adults, you must have one central idea, one overall point when you write your narrative essay. So use dialogue to spice up your essay, and include dialogue as this is part of your grade. Place quotation marks. Record exactly as people talk. Use taglines so people know who said the dialogue. Place question marks and periods inside the quotation marks. So a narrative essay can be written as one story or two stories or multi-stories. Pre-writing, writing, and rewriting are the three stages of the writing process. In pre-writing, you are going to write the outline of your paper. So the most embarrassing event in my life was when I met my wife, and the very first time I met my wife, I threw up all over her. Can you imagine throwing up over, you see the most beautiful woman in the room, and then you throw up all over her? Okay. And you would think if someone threw up all over you, you would walk away. But this woman didn't mind that her future husband threw up on her because she was a nurse. She was a medic. So when you write a thesis statement, you have to write it at the last sentence of the first paragraph. So paragraph 2, I was a young, immature, angry teenager who grew up by joining the army. Paragraph 3, on break from military exercises, I entered a bar with some friends, started drinking, and met the most beautiful woman who would become my wife. When I first met my future wife, I puked all over her, yet she gave me a second chance and left me her phone number. So paragraph 5, the most embarrassing event of my life was when I puked all over my future wife. And so in this essay, this person moral is always give people a second chance, because that lady got puked on, yet she gave that guy a second chance. So that's the moral of this story, is always give people a second chance. So in your pre-writing, you're going to write an outline. In your writing, the second stage of the writing process, you're going to transform your outline into a rough draft. And so that was a true story from my military student who actually did throw up on her wife. But then she gave him a second chance. So this is the entire story. I was just out of the military. I was proud that I had finished boot camp with honors. When I graduated from boot camp, my parents were there for the ceremony. It was on that day I went from being an immature, angry teenager to a mature young man. On break from military exercises, I went to a bar for a drink where I saw the most beautiful woman. I am not one who holds my liquor very well. I went to meet her, to make a good impression on her. The most embarrassing day of my life was when I saw the most beautiful woman in the world in a bar. I puked all over her. And she later gave me a second chance and became my wife. So the life lesson I learned is always give people a second chance. And then your paragraph 1 will match what you said in your introduction. In my youth, I was an angry, immature teenager, and he partied all the time until he became a Marine. After boot camp, he went to a small town, to a bar, and he saw the most beautiful woman. As he approached her, and this is the climax of the story, so paragraph 4 is your climax. So as he approached her, he threw up on her. And so when he threw up on his future wife, it was the most embarrassing event of his life. But she gave him her phone number, okay? And then she left because she saw the sincere desire that he was really trying to say hello, and then couldn't hold his liquor. And luckily for him, she was a medic, and she was a nurse. So she saw all kinds of people throwing up on her all the time. So that was no big deal for her. That was why when he threw up on her, she wasn't grossed out. So she gave him a second chance. She actually thought it was very cute in real life. That's why it's based on a true story. So always give people a second chance. So this is an example of a story that has a moral. Okay? And then the last stage is that you rewrite your paper and you post it to the forum for peer review and then submit it for final draft. And so that the story structure of a one-story essay structure is that you have your thesis statement and you mention elements of your essay in your introduction. Then your paragraph 2 is like a faraway context story. Paragraph 3, recent context story. And then paragraph 4 is going to be your climax. And then paragraph 5 is your conclusion. Here is another example of a one-story essay. The lesson learned is I always park your car in the faculty parking and listen to your elders. There were actually 2 different, so the story goes, and I'm going to shorten this. It used to take me 90 minutes to go to work, to drive to work. As soon as I got out of the car, I would run to the bathroom, okay? So I parked closest to the bathroom once I got to the school. And I was parking with the other students in student parking. All the other teachers said, if you park in student parking, the students don't know how to drive, your car's going to get trashed. I didn't listen because the student parking was right next to the bathroom, and so I would run to the bathroom. I was teaching at my first high school job after college. I was young and inexperienced. I did not listen very well to my elders. I had a mind of my own. I always parked my car closer in student parking because it was closer to my classroom and closer to the bathroom. As soon as I arrived at school, I would head straight to the bathroom, whereas the faculty lot was far from the restroom. Other teachers warned me to park in the faculty lot, but I did not listen because I thought I knew better, being young and thinking those teachers were just old. Then the next paragraph, you build suspense. Every day I would commute to work. When it rained, it would take me 90 days to get to work. And without rain, it would take me only 45 minutes to get to work. I ate my breakfast in my car or on my way to work, which consisted of a huge drink or lots of water to stay hydrated. Also, on my way to work, I liked to listen to the radio to stay awake. This job was the longest commute I ever had as a teacher. As soon as I would arrive, so here you have the climax. Okay, this is the climax. As soon as I would arrive at my school, I would park my car in student parking with the other student cars. After all, I was practically the same age as the students, so I did not think that the other students would crash my car. Then one day, while I was teaching English, I heard a loud bang. We all ran to the window to see what happened. Evidently, a student had reversed his car without seeing my parked car and backed right into my passenger door, totaling it completely. Then Mrs. Martin, the oldest teacher in the school, said, "Miss Ho, I told you so. You should have parked in the faculty parking lot. These kids do not know how to drive yet. You should listen to your elders." So here you have the climax of the actual crash, where the student backed right into my door, and my door fell off, actually. My car door, passenger car door, fell off. He practically totaled my car. If I'd been sitting in the driver's seat, I would be dead, okay? Luckily, I'd already run out of my car. I was already in the classroom teaching when he totally totaled my car. That was the end of that car, and I had to buy another car. And that student then had to get punished by, they revoked his driver's permit, and then his parents said he couldn't drive until he was 21. And at the time this happened, he was only 15. Meanwhile, all his friends at 16 were already driving their cars, you see. So this student paid a heavy price for crashing into a teacher's car, not just another student's car, but a teacher's car. So he got, and then later I did get damages and everything. The parents did apologize, but here you have the climax of the car, the student car crashing into my car. And so the lesson learned for me is listen to your elders. If they say park in the student parking, you park in student parking. And those were the two lessons. Park in student parking, listen to your elders. So that's a story with a moral. And so I learned many life lessons that day. So here's your conclusion. So in your conclusion, you summarize your story. I learned I need to always park in faculty parking lot to keep my car safe. And I learned to listen to my elders and not be so young, arrogant, and stupid. Every day, Mrs. Martin would remind me, "You have no idea how many accidents I have seen in the student parking lot in the 40 years I've taught at this school." Therefore, that's why I say from personal experience, it's not a good idea to park your brand new car in a parking lot where where the students are gonna crash into it. I wished I had listened to her advice, because if I'd listened to her advice, I would still have that car. And so here you have, now that's that first example, the first two examples about the military student and the parking lot. Those are examples of one story, in which you have one story that proves one moral. Second kind of story is when you have a bunch of mini stories inside your mini stories that talk about one central idea as your narrative essay. So a narrative essay can be written as a series of mini stories. If you want to give tips to young people, the life lessons you have learned in your life, each lesson would be a mini story from your life. Thesis statement. Example, I became a nurse because I want to help people heal from their pain, illnesses, and injuries. I want to be a role model for my children. And most of all, I want a flexible job. So in this particular essay, you will tell 3 stories of why you want to help people. That's one story. How you will be a role model for your children. That's the second story. And why you want to go back to nursing school. That's a third story. So the main idea is why you became a nurse. So here's an example of a multi-story narrative essay. So in this case, I'm going to write about my experiences of why I became a teacher. When I was young, my parents took me to Taiwan to visit my grandparents. Taiwan is a beautiful country. It's an island next to China. I became fascinated with learning about other cultures while I was in Taiwan. Thus, in college, I lived in the international student dormitory. So I'm not in Taiwan anymore. So when I went to college, I graduated. I went to State University of New York at Stony Brook. And while I was at Stony Brook, I lived in the international student dorm. And I used to meet students from all over the world. And I used to help them with their papers, and I helped them correct papers, and I enjoyed being with international students. So I enjoy being a teacher because I get to meet students from all over the world. So that's the first reason. I get to do fun activities with students, and I get to turn my students into lifelong lovers of writing. Teaching English allows me to meet students from around the world. So here you have your topic sentence that goes back to your thesis, that I became a teacher to meet students from around the world. Through the years, I have taught students from Japan, China, Taiwan, Brazil, Mexico, Guatemala, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. I learned about these students' customs and traditions. I was surprised all these students thought Americans spend too much time suing each other over the slightest argument rather than work things out like in their countries. And they are all surprised that the U.S. does not have health care like in their countries. So teaching students from other cultures allows me to see the U.S. from another perspective. Teaching English writing allows me to do fun activities with students of all ages. When I used to teach face-to-face creative writing, I used to teach these little kids. And the little kids love to write the animal talking creative stories. And and then we would write round robin stories. That is, one person starts the story, another person continues the story, then another person continues the story. So I loved teaching little kids. It allows me to, not just little kids, but adults. And we would also, when I taught online, we would do round robin teaching stories in the forums. In other words, one person would post, once upon a time, Johnny saw a talking animal. And then the next student would say, and this talking animal was a frog. And then the next student, so that sort of thing. We're not doing that in this class, but in my other literature class, that's what we did, round robin writing. So that's a lot of fun. So that's another reason why I like to teach writing, is to be able to do fun activities with my students. And also teaching writing, English writing, allows me to turn my students into lifelong learners of English and lifelong lovers of writing. And so that's why I love to teach adults. So in conclusion, and here you see that I repeat the thesis statement as the first sentence of the last paragraph. I love teaching writing to meet students, to do fun activities, and to make them lifelong learners of writing. So you could do the same thing in the same way. You would write all of these mini stories of why you want to help people, why you want to be a role model, and why you want a steady job. With each paragraph, you will write a little mini life lesson story of your life. So this is why this is an example of the narrative essay with many different stories in it that goes back to one main thesis. And so you can also, if you want to write about reasons why to become a nurse, you can look up these articles which will tell you the benefits of becoming a nurse, and then you can use those reasons in your essay. The saddest day of my life, and here's another multi-story essay, okay, in which you have the saddest day of my life was when my mother died of COVID-19. I learned to never take a loved one for granted. So here you tell the story of her death in 3 paragraphs and how I remember her in my heart. So what 3 reasons did I give for becoming a teacher? What 3 reasons are you going to give for becoming a nurse? And in the narrative, so you have an example of both of these styles together in your page, on page 35 of your textbook, where Nicholas Gage talks about the teacher who changed my life. Mini story number 1, how he first met his teacher. Mini story number 2 is how his teacher became the grandmother of his children. So you're going to have to read the story yourself. It's a great read. In your essay, you must have 3 different parts to your essay: introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. You always need a thesis statement as the last sentence of your introduction. Your body paragraphs must relate back to your thesis. You have to have one central idea for your essay, and each paragraph has to have 5 to 7 sentences. Each body paragraph talks about one idea, and the thesis is repeated as the first sentence of the last paragraph. Your introduction consists of 3 parts: the hook, the bridge, and the thesis. And the thesis is the last sentence. Your body paragraphs has a topic sentence, supporting sentence, and concluding sentence. And your conclusion, you repeat the thesis, then you give 5-sentence summary of your essay. So no matter which style you choose, whether you choose the one-story narrative or the multi-story narrative, you will always have to write 3 different, you will always have 3 different parts: introduction, body paragraphs, and conclusion. The last kind of narrative essay is Proverbs. Narrative essays that teach a moral lesson using Proverbs. So when you write a story from a proverb, you will most likely be using the one-story method. For example, all that glitters is not gold. Don't judge a book by its cover. So you can write a story that illustrates these proverbs. So here's an example of all that glitters is not gold. When I go shopping on Amazon for clothes, I see dazzling, amazing cheap clothes on sale. I click on the picture and see a dress that has gold inlays and looks fantastic on the model. I think to myself, hey, I want to buy that beautiful gold dress at a cheap price because I shopped on Amazon. And then your thesis statement would be, well, all that glitters is not gold. I love shopping on Amazon because it is so convenient. I can shop from the comfort of my home without wasting gas. I can just click on the Buy Now button and I am done. And when shopping on Amazon, I see pictures of beautiful dresses on beautiful models, and I want to dress just like it. Then your 4th paragraph is the suspense. I take the plunge. I buy that beautiful dress. Let me go back. Buy that beautiful dress. And then when the dress arrives, it looks so cheap and it's so ugly. So I was fooled by the deceptive marketing pictures of the dress. So this proves the moral. All that glitters is not gold. Okay, because I got fooled and taken in by Amazon. So the proverb, all that glitters is not gold, could not be more true. All those glittering pictures on Amazon of beautiful dresses are deceptive. I got taken in by the marketing photos and a cheap price. I learned my lesson that to buy good clothes, you need to go to the store ahead of time so that you can see what you're buying and not be fooled by Amazon. And so that's an example of a proverb, narrative story with a proverb. Here are some proverbs that you can write about. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Actions speak louder than words. A penny saved is a penny earned. Don't judge a book by its cover. So here you can go over and write about a proverb for your narrative essay. Okay, so here are some more proverbs. Okay, many students who have English as a second language may not be familiar with English proverbs, so you may find it harder to write a story based on a proverb. In that case, you can write a story where you learned a life lesson. What are your favorite proverbs? I remember I learned mine when I was in like 2nd, 3rd, or 4th grade, because that's when the teachers had us memorize all the proverbs. Okay. Anyway, here are some narrative essay topics that you can do. Okay, so you can write about your proudest moments, an experience you had with racism, write about a time you were wrong about someone, your favorite childhood memory, someone whom you lost but remember forever, why you love your pet, a memorable teacher, losing faith, getting fired, most exciting experience. And then you can write deep personal stories to help society, to fight racism, or to fight poverty. You can use your personal narrative story to launch a movement or better the world in some way. You can even write about controversial topics. And so here you can write about, so some teachers teach writing in order to teach their students how to write, have a voice for social justice. So that's another reason why you would write about, especially if you're writing about racism, for it takes courage for a person to tell a very personal traumatic story in order to teach others. For deep personal narratives like this, it has to have a purpose. So you would want to stop racism, put a perpetrator to jail, advance social justice, improve social conditions for everyone in your community, give hope that things will get better. And it takes bravery to write about a controversial topic as well. You can write about homelessness in your community. If you have done outreach work, you can write about experiences helping the homeless. I had a student write about how she helped homeless people by giving them free dental work. And she was in Fortis College to become a dental hygienist. Just make sure that your essay has one central idea. So I wrote about Fu Manchu and the evil eye. So the pandemic hit March 2020. Suddenly, all the stores were closed. Governor Newsom ordered everyone to wear masks inside and outside. At first, people were unfamiliar with wearing masks. I was hesitant to wear masks because then only my Asian eyes would appear, making me look menacing, as Asian eyes have been stereotyped to mean evil in early 20th century literature. Think Fu Manchu. Asians were portrayed as the enemy in World War II movies. Since COVID-19 started in China, people blamed the COVID deaths on Asian Americans and thought all Asian Americans were infected with COVID-19 and should go back to Asia. When I first put on my mask, I experienced an Asian hate crime that I want to share to make others aware that Asian hate crimes hurt. And so this is how America saw Asians back in the 1900s. People were unfamiliar with wearing masks. I was not used to wearing a mask where only my eyes would be shown. In 20th century literature, like Fu Manchu, the villain in this story always had slanted eyes. Slanted eyes meant deception and evil, while someone with round eyes meant heroism and good. I did not want to wear a mask and look like the villain in the story. I did not want to make people think I was Fu Manchu. And during World War II, Asians were portrayed as the enemy in World War II movies. especially when the Japanese in World War II movies, you would see the Japanese soldiers as cold-blooded, killing innocent American soldiers. So many Japanese Americans were placed in concentration camps out of fear that they were spies for Japan. So there is a history of Asian hate in the United States. Therefore, since COVID originated in China, Asian Americans were blamed for COVID and for the COVID deaths. So here I'm in the fourth, always remember that the fourth paragraph is your climax. And so when I first put on my mask, a non-Asian said to me, "Go back to China where you come from. Stop infecting us Americans with your virus." And as he drove by in his car, I stood there on the sidewalk, hurt, shocked, embarrassed, and stunned, as bystanders gave me a horrific look as if they agreed with the racist driver. I became afraid to go outside in those first days when we had to wear the mask. And so when I first put on my mask, I experienced a hate crime that I want to share with others to make people aware that Asian hate crimes hurt. So this was my thesis statement. So I always place my thesis statement as the first sentence. Stunned, shaken, and then I summarize the highlights of my essay. Stunned, shaken, and embarrassed after someone blamed me for the COVID-19 outbreak, I raced inside my building in tears. I would not go shopping with a mask, and I did not want to go outside my house during those first days unless somebody was there to protect me. And I disliked having Asian eyes and wished that I had rounder eyes. I write this essay to make others aware that I am not the virus, that I am American, just like everybody else. And so here you have this is the early days of the pandemic, where when an Asian American would go walking outside and confront people with masks on, she would never know if that person would be an Asian hater or be somebody nice. And at first, I think Americans were not used to seeing just the Asian eyes. Eventually, everybody got used to it, but in the very beginning, it was very hateful, and it was very scary to walk outside. And this is how Asian people are portrayed in movies. Notice it's an Asian person right over here that's going to slice up the helpless, innocent damsel in distress. So, your week 2 writing assignment, you're going to write an outline for your narrative essay. And I'm going to go over, and so you have many different ways to write your narrative essay. You can have your narrative essay as your one-story essay, multi-story essay. You can write a narrative essay with a proverb, or you can write a narrative essay to fight social justice. And so it's totally up to you what kind of narrative essay you want to write. So I hope that this video helps you understand the different kinds of narrative essays that you can write for your paper. If you have any questions, feel free to email me.